Welcome to Graywood Gardening. I established this 1,000 square foot butterfly garden last year, and by the end of the year there were a few dozen plants that the deer hadn't eaten. Well, this spring we planted several hundred more plants and direct seeded a bunch of stuff, and now that it's the middle of August, I thought it would be a good time for a tour of a garden desperately in need of weeding, and talk about what has survived and which flowers the butterflies seem to like the most, because the butterfly garden has been very successful. It is filled with butterflies all of the time, and I'm particularly pleased about that because we're right at the edge of a native wildflower meadow, and I actually see more butterflies here in the butterfly garden than I do in the meadow, which has thousands of flowers in bloom at any time. Alright, let's start right over here. Alright, here in the front of the butterfly garden we have the first of two butterfly bushes. The butterfly bush is doing great after I wasn't sure it was going to survive the winter. And this is actually tied for one of the two plants the butterflies seem to like the most. Clearly has tons of nectar, really common to find really all varieties of butterflies on it. Now over here, also in the front, is the rattlesnake master. So this is about as impressive as the rattlesnake master flowers get. I see lots and lots of bees on it. I don't see a ton of butterflies here. Not super popular. That said, I do see butterflies on here from time to time, and of course the reason it's here is the rattlesnake master is one of the host plants for the black swallowtail butterfly. Right next to it, I have four of these 10-foot by 10-foot blocks that I planted a mixture of Rudbeckia, Echinacea, New England Aster, some Liatris, Goldenrod, and Allium. And basically everything in here isn't going to bloom until next year, except for the New England Aster, which should bloom at the end of this year. So these ones, all planted out this year with perennials. The Rudbeckia might bloom this year, but everything else is going to need to be a year old. But next to it, the zinnias are doing phenomenal. So I direct seeded all of the zinnias in front, and I transplanted zinnias that I bought from a nursery in back. As you can see, the direct seeded ones are actually doing much, much better than the transplants. The zinnias are also incredibly popular with the butterflies. Almost any time I'm out here, there's butterflies on it. Very, very frequently, the giant swallowtail and tiger swallowtail. I would say the zinnias are the second most favorite flower for the butterflies. They're super colorful, they're super attractive, and the deer don't eat them. I love this so much, and it's so attractive here as we get into August, that I'm actually thinking I'll keep at least one big open space in the butterfly garden always for zinnia, rather than filling it all in with perennials. Alright, next to zinnia, we have another one of these 4x4 blocks, although this does have some echinacea that I planted last year. There's just a couple that I put in last year, so we do have some echinacea in here blooming now. Over here we have false nettle. It's never going to look very impressive. This is only here because it is a host plant for the buckeye butterfly. Right, and over here we have a whole bunch of butterfly weed. Of course, one of the host plants for the monarch butterfly. The front ones here were planted last year, but in the back is a whole bunch more that were just planted this year, and they're actually blooming in the first year, which is impressive. These are doing super, super well. They're obviously visited by a bunch of butterflies, including monarchs, and I have even found monarch caterpillars munching away on these, so they are doing their job. Now in back, behind them we have agastache. This is a flower in the mint family, which generally means deer will leave it alone. It has these purple stalks. These are absolutely covered with bees all of the time. That said, I have yet to see more than just like the occasional butterfly on it. So agastache, beloved by bees, but only so-so for the butterflies. Alright, And now across from the butterfly weed, we have a bunch of prairie clover that is done blooming. More prairie clover on this side, and more butterfly weed on this side. Here I have an entire 10-foot section of just butterfly weed, because of course monarchs are so important. We have another 10-foot by 10-foot block of stuff that'll bloom next year. In here, I have Pearly Everlasting. This is a host plant for the American lady butterfly. I actually really like the silvery foliage that it has. It's, the little white flowers don't really pop much, but the foliage does really nicely. I think next year I'm going to try to get some more of these and make this clump larger. I direct seeded a whole bunch of nasturtium in front, and very little of the nasturtium actually grew. Germination was really, really bad. I'm pretty sure it's not due to my watering. Obviously the zinnias did phenomenal. Behind the nasturtium here is a whole bunch of chrysanthemums that were transplanted from another garden, and these chrysanthemums are just now starting to bloom. So we should have those blooming in just a couple of weeks. Behind the chrysanthemums, we have Cleary sage and scarlet sage. The scarlet sage is an annual. It's sort of just about done blooming now, but it was pretty popular amongst the butterflies. The scarlet sage was definitely a winner. We have another desperately needing to be weeded section of plants that'll bloom next year. And the final end of the butterfly garden, again, direct seeded a whole bunch of nasturtium, almost nothing germinated, and the stuff that did has not done well. Behind that, I have a whole bunch of nicotiana, which is doing okay. The nicotiana has actually been eaten by something. I don't know if it was a deer or a rabbit. And it is staying pretty small. And one of the things that's really noticeable about the nicotiana is Little Graywood started her own nicotiana from seed and planted it in her garden, in the veggie garden, and that is just a monstrous, massive plant. There's two of them, they're huge, and it really lets me know that the nicotiana here are grossly underperforming. Behind the nicotiana is Tithonia. This is Mexican sunflower. It also got eaten. It should be like 5-6 feet high by now, and it's pretty stunted because of being eaten a few times. Next to that is the Joe Pye weed. The Joe Pye weed is the other plant that is tied with the butterfly bush as being the most popular plant for the butterflies. It's also super popular for the bees. We seem to, interestingly, have two different varieties of Joe Pye. We've got this purple and this white, which is really interesting. Oh, there's a monarch on it right now. Look at that. There's some Joe Pye weed endorsement as we're speaking. So we seem to have this white Joe Pye weed in addition to the pink/purple Joe Pye weed. And it's odd because I bought both of them as plugs from Prairie Moon Nursery, and it was supposed to be the same thing, but either way, butterflies love it, so I'm happy. And finally, at the end of the butterfly garden, we have another butterfly bush, about the same size, also super popular with all of the butterflies. All right, and that is what the butterfly garden is looking like now in its second year, I guess. The first year was last year, kind of, but most of it got eaten. I have to say I am thrilled with how this is doing. Every time I come out here, it is just filled with butterflies. All the butterflies in the video today, I just filmed in like the 15 minutes that I have been out here, including a bunch of monarchs. We're having a really good year for monarchs. I think since the beginning of June, I've literally never walked outside without seeing a monarch fly by. And of course we have a lot of milkweed patches, and now we're going to have a whole lot more thanks to this garden. One other thing that I'm particularly proud of with the butterfly garden is it is right alongside this wildflower meadow, which is filled with thousands of native wildflowers. And of course we often see butterflies visiting those flowers as well. But almost every time I'm out here, I see more butterflies concentrated here in the butterfly garden than I do in the whole meadow out there, which makes me pretty happy with our plant selections. And you know what? This is going to look so much better next year when all of these perennials we planted this year are able to bloom. All right, well, until next time, happy gardening.